Stefan Diggs is one step away from signing with the Commanders, and in a minute I'm gonna break down exactly why Adam Peters still hasn't pulled that trigger and whether that reason holds up or if it's the most expensive mistake of this offseason. But before we get there, there are 6 players in Ashburn right now fighting for that WR2 spot, and one of them, a third-round rookie out of Clemson named Antonio Williams, is doing things at OTAs that have Logan Paulson and Brian Mitchell talking. The problem is that hype has a name DMV fans know all too well, and it's called the Dyami Brown Summer. And I'm gonna tell you exactly why Williams' story could end the same way. And while Washington figures out that roster hole, over in New York, the Giants just made 3 receiver moves in 48 hours. Odell Beckham, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Braxton Berrios all at once. And Adam Schefter just reported that Malik Nabers had an unplanned second surgery. That's not building depth. That's preparing to play a full season without your best offensive weapon. And if the NFC East opens up because of it, the Commanders need to be ready to take advantage. All of that right now. Stefan Diggs to Washington. Okay, I need y'all to understand the full context of why this conversation is happening today and not in August, because there is a very specific tactical and financial reason ESPN is putting Diggs' name next to the Commanders right now, at this point in the calendar. First things first, who is Stefan Diggs in 2026? Because there is a narrative out there that says Diggs is done, that he is 32 years old, that he is coming off an ACL, that he had problems with his previous team. And that narrative is lazy, incomplete, and if the Commanders buy into it without actually analyzing it, they are going to make the same mistake fans make when they only look at the age on the back of a baseball card. Let's go to the real facts. Stefan Diggs signed with the Patriots in 2025 after Buffalo cut him in circumstances that had way more to do with the Bills' locker room dynamics than with his actual level of play. In New England, surrounded by a developing team with a young quarterback in Drake May, Diggs led the team in receiving yards. Led the team, not second, first. On a team that made a Super Bowl run, yes, but a team that did not have the offensive firepower of the AFC's elite contenders. And he did it coming off an ACL surgery. That is not a finished player. That is a player who found the right motivation in the right environment. Now, what happened after that? The Patriots released him. And there is the uncomfortable question that nobody in Washington is asking seriously enough right now. Why did they release him? Because if it was purely financial, that is one thing. If it was because his physical level dropped dramatically in the second half of the season, that is a completely different conversation. My honest read of the situation, and look, I could be wrong here, is that the Patriots are in full rebuild mode, and Diggs at his age and salary did not fit into their long-term plan, regardless of his performance level. That is what makes the most sense when you see New England playing young players across the entire roster. It was not a performance-based decision. It was a direction of the franchise decision. Now, what can Stefan Diggs actually do for the Commanders specifically in 2026? Let's talk about this tactically, because this is where the conversation gets genuinely interesting. David Blau comes in as the new offensive coordinator. Blau brings concepts that prioritize horizontal spacing, precision timing routes, and manufacturing easy throws for the quarterback that then create explosiveness after the catch. That is exactly the type of offense that maximizes a receiver with Diggs' route IQ. Because that is what Diggs has that nobody on that list of 6 WR candidates has right now. Experience reading defenses before the snap, adjusting routes in real time, finding soft spots in complex coverages. That is not something you teach in a training camp. That is something you develop over 8, 9, 10 years of playing in the NFL against the best cornerbacks in the world. Jaden Daniels in year 3 needs a receiver he can trust on 3rd and 7. He needs somebody that when the game is 21-20 in the 4th quarter and the clock shows 2 minutes, knows exactly where to go against whatever coverage the defensive coordinator decides to throw out there. None of the 6 players competing for that WR2 spot can guarantee you that right now. Diggs can. The financial argument works too. The Commanders have $43 million in cap space right now, 3rd highest in the entire league. Diggs in free agency is not going to break the bank. We are probably talking about a 1 or 2 year deal. Annual value somewhere between 8 and 12 million, depending on how much competition there is for his services. For a team with $43 million available, that number does not move the needle in a way that compromises the future of the roster. And here is the point I care most about analyzing. Diggs does not have to be the same Diggs from Buffalo to be valuable in Washington. He does not need 100 catches and 1,200 yards. The Commanders need somebody who takes pressure off McLaurin, who forces defenses to stop putting their number one cornerback on Terry on every single play, and who is a reliable option in critical down and distance situations. That is within what Diggs can do right now at his age and after his recovery. The real counter argument, the one actually worth taking seriously, is the health concern. An ACL at 31, 32 years old for a receiver who depends on explosion in his break routes, on acceleration off the line, that is a real risk factor. I am not going to minimize it. The Commanders already know what it feels like to watch their most important player go down injured. Jaden Daniels missed significant time in 2025, and that was a defining factor in the season's collapse. The last thing this team needs is to sign Diggs in July and have him on injured reserve in October. But look, that risk exists with any player. The question is not whether there is risk. The question is whether the potential value justifies the risk at the right price. And on a short incentive-based contract with a manageable base salary, I think the answer is yes. What concerns me more than the health, honestly, is this. Does Diggs fit the locker room that Dan Quinn is building? Because the history with Diggs in Buffalo, the friction with Josh Allen, with the front office, the attitude in difficult moments, that is not a rumor. That is documented. Quinn has been very specific about wanting a culture-first locker room, players who put the team above themselves. Diggs has more than enough talent. The question is whether the Diggs of 2026, after his time in New England, after being cleared of his legal issues, is a different Diggs in terms of attitude. I genuinely do not know. Nobody from the outside knows, but that is the question Adam Peters has to answer for himself before he writes that check. My final position on Diggs is this. If the Commanders can structure a one-year deal with incentives, base value in the 8 to 10 million range, and the locker room reports during the process are positive, you sign him. You do not think about it for 2 weeks. You sign him. Because the window with Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract is right now, not in 2 years, right now. And wasting that window because you are afraid of a manageable risk is exactly the kind of timidity that separates teams that win Super Bowls from teams that stay home in January. And this is where the Diggs conversation becomes genuinely urgent. Because when you look at what is happening in OTAs with the Commanders wide receiver group, you understand immediately why ESPN is putting veteran names next to Washington right now. Ben Solak from ESPN documented it in a way that does not leave much room for easy optimism. There are 6 players competing for the right to line up next to Terry McLaurin as the number 2 receiver on this team. 6. Treylon Burks, Dyami Brown, Antonio Williams, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, and Van Jefferson. That is the group, and when Solak wrote about it, he summarized it perfectly with one line that stuck with me. Ben Standig said it on radio, and Brian Mitchell, who actually played with Monk and Clark, laughed immediately because he knows exactly how true it is. This is not Monk and Clark. This is Terry McLaurin and then everybody else. Terry McLaurin and the Pips, Standig said. And yeah, something like that. Now, let's be fair to this group because I think the narrative of the Commanders having nothing behind McLaurin is true in terms of proven production, but it ignores some real details worth analyzing. Treylon Burks is the name that catches my attention most within this veteran group. Logan Paulson, former Commanders tight end, was at OTAs and was direct about it. Burks was the player who stood out the most. He described him as looking healthy, fast, with sharp acceleration and deceleration. Burks was a first-round pick by the Titans. He has the size, he has the athleticism, and the historical problem with him has always been health and consistency, not talent. If Burks arrives healthy to training camp and maintains what he is showing in OTAs, he is a real candidate for that spot. But the history of OTA hype with Burks is also part of the problem. Dyami Brown has been a constant of looks great in summer for years in Washington, and that production rarely translates to the regular season against elite cornerbacks. The warning that came from one of the outlets covering him this week was direct. This is a movie Commanders fans have seen before. The Dyami Brown summer always promises more than it delivers in September. Now let's get to the name that has everybody excited, Antonio Williams. Pick 71 in the 2026 draft, 3rd round out of Clemson. The minicamp reports were positive. negative. The OTA reports are even more positive. ESPN's Jordan Reed was explicit in his analysis. Outside of McLaurin, the Commanders do not have a reliable threat, and that opens up enormous space for Williams from day one. He projects him primarily as a slot receiver where his route running and ability to create separation can shine inside Blau's system. Brian Mitchell, 14 years in the NFL, saw him in practice and was honest in his evaluation. He is not a finished product, Mitchell said, but you can see exactly why they drafted him. The quick twitch, the way he settles into routes, the way he accelerates after the catch. Those are things you cannot easily teach. Either you have them or you do not. And here is my real analysis on Williams. The problem is not the talent. The problem is the expectation. When you are the most exciting rookie in a group of 6 mediocre players competing for an important roster spot, the hype inflates to levels that are genuinely unfair for somebody who has never seen an NFL safety coverage at real speed. The cornerbacks in the NFC East, specifically the Eagles and the Cowboys corners, are not the practice cornerbacks from OTAs. There will be growing pains. The question is whether that growth process happens in a context where the Commanders can absorb the mistakes, or whether Williams has to be perfect from week 1 because there is nobody else behind him. And that second scenario is exactly the current situation if the Commanders do not bring in a veteran. The number that summarizes all of this. The Commanders have been unable to solve the WR2 problem for years. Last season it was Deebo Samuel, who is gone now, and who was not the permanent solution anyway because McLaurin also got hurt and everything collapsed at the same time. The year before that, it was hope that someone would emerge from the internal group. The pattern is always the same. Summer optimism. Hard reality in October. Adam Peters knows it. Dan Quinn knows it. And that is why the names of DIGGS and Brandon Ayuk keep circulating. Ayuk remains the biggest name available in the market, but he is still under contract with the 49ers, and that situation has not moved yet. The Commanders and Ayuk are waiting for the same thing. Something to change in San Francisco that unlocks that conversation. For now, Ayuk is a name that exists on the radar, but not in active negotiations. What is clear is this. If the Commanders start the season with this group of 6 players without adding anyone from outside, they are putting a burden on Jaden Daniels that no quarterback should carry alone. Daniels was incredible in year 1. Year 2, the injuries destroyed him. Year 3 has to be the year this team surrounds him with the right tools and tells him, now, show us you are the quarterback we believe you are. Giving him 6 options with no proven production next to McLaurin is not surrounding your franchise quarterback. It is hoping the miracle happens on its own, because something is happening in New York that the Commanders need to fully understand, and most of the media coverage is treating it as a giant story when it is actually a story that directly impacts Washington's divisional race. Malik Nabers had a rookie season that was legitimately impressive. 109 receptions, second all-time among rookies. 1,204 yards in 15 games, 7 touchdowns. That is a real player. That is a receiver who, if healthy, makes the Giants a completely different team in year 2 of Jackson Dart and year 1 of John Harbaugh as head coach. The problem is Nabers is not healthy. He tore his ACL in week 4 of the 2025 season. He had his first surgery in October. And then in May, Adam Schefter reported something that should be setting off alarm bells in East Rutherford. A second surgery, not planned, not expected, to address scar tissue and stiffness following the first operation. That is not a positive sign. That is a complication in a recovery process that was already delicate to begin with. Schefter was direct. His status for the season opener is very much up in the air. And what I saw from the video at Brian Burns' celebrity softball game, where Giants beat reporters like Ryan Dunleavy and Jordan Ronan were watching him carefully and noting that it was the most they had seen Nabers move since his ACL. That tells me the level of concern in New York is real. They were not there casually. They were there because everyone in the Giants' orbit is watching Nabers move in any available context, trying to figure out where he actually is in the recovery. And now look at what the Giants organization did in response. They signed Odell Beckham Jr., who is returning to the NFC East after years away. They signed Juju Smith-Schuster. They signed Braxton Berrios. 3 wide receiver moves at the same time. That is not building depth. That is preparing to operate without your best offensive weapon for a significant portion of the season. The first time the Commanders face the Giants in 2026 is in Week 5, October 11th. The second time is Week 10, November 12th on Thursday Night Football. If NABERS is not at 100% in either of those games, and the current evidence suggests that possibility is very real, the Commanders have a massive divisional advantage that did not exist 6 months ago when everyone was projecting the Giants as the most improved team in the NFC East. Now, I will be honest about the limit of this narrative. NABERS playing softball and moving with some limitation is not conclusive evidence of anything. It was a charity event. It was not a speed test, but when you combine that with the unplanned second surgery, with the 3 moves in the receiver group, with Schefter saying his status is up in the air, the pattern is clear. The Giants are planning scenarios without NABERS because they have to. For the Commanders, this means one concrete thing. If Washington makes the right roster moves, especially at the wide receiver position, this team has the ability to lead the NFC East in 2026. The Eagles are still the biggest obstacle, but the Giants with a limited or absent NABERS are a very different team from the one everyone was projecting in the preseason, and that fam is a real opportunity that this team cannot afford to waste by staying mediocre at WR2. That is everything I have got today, and listen, if this video left you with one clear question in your head, it has to be this. Does Adam Peters make a move, or does he wait? Because the window with Jaden Daniels on a rookie contract is not forever. The Giants are vulnerable, the NFC East is available, and behind Terry McLaurin, there are 6 players with no proven production fighting for a spot, while Stefon Diggs is still sitting out there without a team. Peters has $43 million in cap space. He has the intelligence to make the right move. The only question is whether he makes it before it is too late. Raise hail. Always. If this video gave you something, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. Do you sign Stefon Diggs or do you wait for Brandon Ayuk? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one.